Hello, and thank you for joining our Stream of Conscious ADHD podcast. I'm Heidi Fawcett, along with my sister Heather. We are Gen X in menopause and, surprise, newly diagnosed with ADHD. Since we found out about our ADHD during the pandemic, we have spent most weekends sitting in my backyard in Brooklyn with our champagne brunch discussing the impact, the reflections, the grief, the stories. Many adults are now finding they were never diagnosed, so we thought we would bring everyone into our backyard discovery sessions, hoping it will help. We laugh, we cry, we are stream of consciousness conversationalists. We hope you enjoy listening to our discovery and perhaps glean some comfort from it. Here we go, into the backyard.
So when we were growing up, and before we understood our mother's mental illness, she was particularly sensitive for whatever reason about what she perceived as lying. And it was just so difficult for us to navigate that, especially when you're in a household where there is a lot of conflict, right? And you, as the child, are trying to avoid being in conflict with the parents, which was highly likely in the case of our parents. So I just found that I wouldn't call it lying. It was just trying to avoid conflict, right?
Yeah.
And so you would just soften things so you could avoid being in the crosshairs of the father figure who was chemically altered in some way, or our mom who was intermittently having a schizophrenic or manic depressive episode. So we were just mitigating essentially, right?
Right.
Like how to stay out of the crosshairs while managing our own issues, right? Which we did not express ever.
Right. And that's the thing that really is painful for me. And the fact that because of what we grew up in, we weren't even comfortable leaning on each other for things.
Yeah.
Which I think if things had been a little more normal, maybe we would have felt like we could go to each other. But I got a newsletter from Attitude Magazine, and this was just very on par with the video I just did. It's called ADHD and Lying. And it says fight, flight, or freeze, or fib. So as the human brain has evolved and the development of self-protection, blah, 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 at any threat, it was fight or flight. And then more recently, the field of psychology added freeze. Well, now there's a fourth F, and it is fib.
Yeah.
And it is when a child who has ADHD perceives danger, adolescents or even adults
Oh, yeah.
with attention deficit disorder will fib. And
It is to compensate for the things that are happening with your ADHD, where you have to compensate for
Right.
that. And if you can't do it through masking or other techniques, then you're just like, by any means necessary, right? To
Right.
get by.
And this is the thing is that, again, when you think about, okay, you're using up all of this energy to mask or to make sure
To do all the work,
everything
you have
that,
to put in 200% when the other person is putting 100%.
yeah.
And
And
you only do 150, so there's a gap, and then you have to fill the gap with
Right.
something.
No wonder it's that we're just so exhausted. I know that up until at least 5 years ago, or maybe it's more now, you and I had that same feeling of, I still feel like I'm 25 years old, like
Mhm.
in my head and even like physically. There are a lot of people my age are like, somebody called me and she's like, I've been standing here for 10 minutes and my back is hurting. I'm like, 10 minutes? Your back is hurting? Yeah. So I feel
It's happening.
like, but I feel like in my head, I'm still that girl. And I don't know whether that's arrested development or if
Oh.
it's ADHD or if it's just people feel that way in general, but they just never verbalize it.
It's probably both. There's days when you're like, I feel older than I am, but then there's days when you're like, I still feel 25. And I think about oh, look, it's spring has sprung. Um,
Nope.
um, we're watching some birds.
Mating
Yes.
or attempting to.
Anyway, We should avert our eyes. It's
So
very,
we're
it's
in the
very private.
backyard again, as we are.
So we're in this very intermittent space, right? Where we're like middle-aged. What? Where's my drink?
Well, I'm glad at least in our day and age, middle-aged is not
Yeah.
15.
Yes,
Uh,
indeed. And even in our mother's generation, like I remember, like the Golden Girls would be a good example of this. Those women were supposed to be, oh, well, first of all, the actresses were in their 50s,
that
except
just
for the
horrifies
one.
me. Yeah.
And they had all these matronly hairstyles and clothes. And I recently saw a meme where they put all the Golden Girls in like modern hair and clothes, and they looked amazing.
See, it's so weird. And this is the other thing about society, really, just the evolution of human beings. But I feel like it just gets more and more absurd in that area of here we're trying to be like women should not have to, like the whole Barbie movie, America Ferrera's thing. Hi. But and I'm gonna just abruptly change subjects because
Do it.
it's
Because
the
we
stream of
can.
consciousness,
We
and
can.
I brought up Barbie, and then here my mind goes. So one of the things, and I didn't realize this was an ADHD thing, and it makes complete sense, like 100%, but it never occurred to me. And that is when you go to get dressed in the morning for work and you cannot, like you practically have a freaking meltdown because you're like, but I don't want to wear their pants with that shirt, but that's the only shirt it goes, that's the only thing that goes with, and but I don't feel it. So now I got to change to this. And then and you go through this whole, and you're standing in your closet for 30 minutes. And it's like, this is absurd. Okay. So that's when I used to go into the office. Now I do not go into an office. I have, oh, I hear a blue jay. I go into an office. I mean, I don't go into an office anymore. I have like 10 things that I wear, and it doesn't even matter what I put on.
Nope.
And I was yesterday morning, I sat in front of my dresser on the bed. I'm just staring at my dresser. Cat gets in the drawer because the drawer is sitting there open. So of course she's going to get in it. And I'm just staring at her going, what the hell is my problem? I work from home. I'm not going anywhere.
You need to wear the Mark Zuckerberg uniform, which is the same thing every day, and it doesn't matter.
I should do that. Maybe, does he have ADHD? He probably does.
I don't know, maybe. But it sort of reduces the mental load. That's the thing, right?
Holy cow.
The mental load, like I just wasted
Anywhere you can.
Yes.
Yes. And we should really do that. We should go through standard day.
Where are
figure
you
out-
spending your mental load in the day? It should be at work, and in your personal life, it should be like zero load.
Well, unless you have a kid, and then
Oh,
you're like, it's just, I got to make sure I don't break her.
Well, she's almost like
Mentally.
self-running at this point, right?
Well,
Except for the ADHD.
I just think that this is the time when she needs the most guidance. And that's the thing. My whole thing from when she was diagnosed was like, okay, let me try all these different things that could be tools for her to use. Some worked, some didn't.
Everybody's ADHD is different. It's like cancer.
Right.
Everybody's is different.
Right. And so I think that I do that for her, but I don't allow that for myself. Like I'm not saying, okay, Heidi, what are the things that you do that you can, well, besides playing with my hair, which I keep having to put my hat on or put my hood up.
So why is that? I mean, not the hair part, but why don't you make allowances for yourself?
Well, just because I feel like I'm still in that mode of not recognizing all of what is ADHD. Like that whole thing about putting the clothes on. I'm probably yelling on my mic again. So not until Jen has ADHD or I'm on a parents of ADHD, whatever, and I don't realize it's a thing. And then I go, for crying out loud. Like, I just feel like it touches every aspect of my life. And the fact that I didn't know and that I could have been easier on myself. And I think everybody probably goes through that. But when you have ADHD and you're seeing the difference, And you always think, oh my God, this person, they're a superstar because they've got their act together. So my friend from WebMD who came into the company, as soon as she came in, I was like, this woman is a rock star. She has this capacity to listen. And I think we were talking about something similar the other day. She has the ability to listen to something and immediately
Yeah.
give feedback in a way where she is thinking about the impacts from all these different directions and is thinking of solutions, impacts and solutions and all these things.
But it's
In a 30-minute
yeah.
meeting, and you're like, I'm sitting here having to record the damn thing because I can't remember half of it. Like this,
I get that. It's like their immediate ability to process the thing and recommend solutions in the moment. And I have historically always been that person who is like, I'm going to listen to what you're saying. I need to sit for a minute and ruminate on it. And then I could come up with some really good stuff, but not 30 seconds in.
right? The processing part, like, is part of the executive function
Mhm.
that is
And that's why when I'm upset, I don't respond immediately. You take a breath, you step away because you're not,
you're in defense mode.
you
Don't
need to think. And the same true is when you're upset, when you need to think about how to do solutions for something. I need to not respond immediately because I always come up with better ideas if I wait.
So there are two things that I wanted to talk about. One is, well, when we realized the other day, and this is part of why we're doing this podcast, is because something will happen to me and I'll say something to Heather and she's like, oh, that's an ADHD thing, or vice versa. One thing that, and I don't even remember the interaction, but I remember I said something to Grace and then I was like, was that the right word? Did I use that in the correct way? And it was something I know I've used before, but then I'm like, do I even have any recollection of that? And I just thought, well, here's old lady age coming in. You don't
Mhm.
remember what words mean
Mhm. I
or
remember that.
menopause or whatever. So you have,
So it was a phenomenon that I had recently read about where have read a word in passing and you internalize that word and then months later you use it. You're like, oh my gosh, am I using this correctly? And then you Google it afterwards. But it's just a context word. You don't even know the meaning of the word, but you read it in a context and you use it later and you feel very weird about it because you're like, and it just comes out like it just comes out of you like out of nowhere. And then you're like, does this word belong here? I don't even really know the meaning of it. And I do this all the time.
so I wonder what part of executive function that is. That part of working memory? It's delayed.
It's like a weird, like your conscious and unconscious brain are working together. And the conscious brain is like, oh, I'm not in control anymore. The unconscious brain that understands the meaning of this word blurts it out.
And that's an ADHD thing, or
Yeah,
that's
I've
just
heard this. I've read
okay.
this, and I'm sure the studies are ongoing
Yeah.
as it always is.
That's so weird. That's so
Yeah,
weird. And the brain in general, I can't even, because it's, the intricacies of it.
right.
But then you layer on whether it's shooting wrong or shooting late or firing the wrong direction. I don't,
Right. I
I,
didn't know either. It just came. And I was like, well, either they're going to be like, "Ugh, that's not the right way to use that word. That doesn't mean the thing you think it means.
well, one of the things about you though, and I think mom instilled the wordsmithing thing into us, but I feel like people have always they're always like, oh, Heather and her brilliance and this, that, and the other. And so we would be sitting there and anything you said, people would, and they probably still do. I know Rachel does take as gospel because it's like Heather's so smart and she knows all these big words. And so when you talk, and even when to me this day, you will say something and I will just wait and hear the context of it to know what it means because I'm like just always popping out these big words. I mean, a lot of times it will be clinical and I get that, but sometimes it's not. And it's a thing. And I'm like, oh, all right.
And and I appreciate that, even though I'm just flying by the seat of my pants, apparently. But I find
Apparently.
my brain really enjoys wordsmithing.
Yeah.
Like interesting words just tickle my brain. So of course I'm like, I heard this thing or I read this thing, and so it just pleased my brain. So I just want to share it. And it's just fun for me. It's just like a little game in my head.
It's like having trivia, like having
Yeah.
bits of information that you're just
And
like, I'm going to share this with the world.
yeah, and saying the same words over and over again is boring. It's just like art. Like using an interesting word to say something instead of saying the generic word that everyone uses. It's just like entertaining for me.
Yeah.
It
No, I
just
get that.
keeps my brain happy
I
if
get
I can
that.
use a word. But then sometimes I just say a word that I think fits. I'm not sure of the meaning. It seems right. And I'm hoping that I'm not mocked later.
Yeah. Okay. And then the second one I had was flexibility. And this is something, and I haven't delved into it too much, but because we've talked about the whole posture thing,
Mhm.
it makes sense that, and I don't think it has to do with the fact that we're tall and lanky.
No, it's
I
not.
think
I
it
agree.
is.
I've learned this recently. Yeah.
Oh, is it a thing?
Yes.
Okay. Because
Mhm.
I had it on my list of things to research because I find it very okay. So Grace is in, this is an arts school. So she does, in the first semester, she does 2 types of art. She did chorus and graphic arts. This semester, she's taking visual arts and theater. And then the last will be dance and something else. And she is nervous about the dance stuff because we saw the other classes that did dance in the first semester do their thing. And I said, oh, I'm excited for you to do this because I've always loved the dance part of it. And she's like, well, my balance is a thing. That should have been my first indicator that there was an issue, because when she would do the thing where she would take steps up the stairs like this,
Mhm.
you should only do that like as a toddler. And once you're out of the toddler stage, you should be taking one step at a time or every other step.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And she doesn't ride a bike. She doesn't ride a scooter. She took ballet, but was very not graceful about it despite her name.
Mhm.
Our reason for this podcast is to support and uplift women in recognizing the impact undiagnosed ADHD has on their lives and to know that they're not alone. Discovery and grieving for what life could have been if we had only known and had help can be hard sometimes. If you have any thoughts you would like to share, you can email us at genx.adhd.sisters@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. #GenX ADHD Sisters.